Well, we're going to go ahead and get started because we certainly want to honor your time and thank Honor for facilitating and setting all of this up for us today. And she's recording it, so we'll make sure all of the other people receive the recorded version so they can go back. But we just wanted to begin by, telling you last day of November. And although every day of the year is a time of Thanksgiving, but not only at this time of year, but all the year through, we just want you to know how much at NSP we appreciate you and all that you do every day, and specifically what you're doing with this work with the Diversity Task Force. And it's exciting. Honor attached the information that that people had submitted, all the subcommittee work that has been collected. So I'm going to let her speak to that.
Thank you all for meeting those. All the subcommittees got their committee work done, which is a miracle in and of itself, but especially given the short timeline. You only had about 2 or 3 weeks to really get that done. But I was so pleased that all 4 subcommittees did give us work. We have the introductions, the recommendations for each subcommittee, and resources and research for each subcommittee. So that was a real yay. I went ahead and I put all of that stuff together into the start of a draft publication, and I sent that to you along with the agenda for this meeting. So I guess we probably should switch over to that now. I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen, and we can start, because that's our next body of work. So let's start talking about that. Hopefully you can all see it. And this is just a draft. I mean, just kind of a placeholder sort of thing. Okay.
Let me go back to the first
okay,
page,
I'm sorry.
if you will.
Yeah.
That's okay. You'll notice that on the title of this that we do not yet have a title. If you have a suggestion that you would like to pose to us for the title of this cumulative work, please pass that along to us. We have some things kind of rolling around, among our staff as to what we think would work, but we are certainly open to your ideas and your suggestions. So, if you have a suggestion, just, send that to us and send that our way. The first, you just go down to the next one. There you go. And have this listed as Chapter 1, not that we necessarily will call it Chapter 1. This is the first subcommittee work, the group work that's there, the literature review. Also, we're thinking, and we're not real sure, and those of you that have been with the process the entire time, you might be able to, help us better understand this. When you have the topic there, leadership design and impact implementation, is that something that needs to remain in place for this, or can we craft a more succinct title, you think, for each of the subcommittee work? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll say, being part of that first subcommittee, that those topics were very broad and kind of difficult to do our research under, I think. I would, looking more closely at it and reading what we wrote, probably like to bring that in more succinctly.
Yeah, those were our thoughts as well, but we certainly didn't want to alter anything that, had been, y'all had really had deep discussions about, and that there was a reason that those were there. We certainly wanted to honor that if that was something that needed to remain in place. But those kind of were our thoughts as well. We're not going to go ahead.
This is Carrie. I agree that, as the work took place and as we started doing different things, that what I found that even in my subcommittee that it may not actually line up with what is written below. So, yeah, it kind of needs to be reworded.
Okay. And we'll work on that as well. And we're not going to read all this to you. We're going to let you do that. And you can see the different subcommittee work, the recommendations that are listed there, and then their resources and tools follow each of the bodies of work. So as you see your work that you submitted in your subcommittee for each area, content area, or whatever we choose to call those different areas, if there are any revisions that you would like to make, any additions, deletions, or whatever, feel free to do that. You know, as long as you have that to us no later than December the 11th. Any recommendations for any of the content that's been submitted thus far, we'll need that to continue working as we shape this final report and the final document. We will be working with a partner for the design and the rollout of this. Once we get all of your revisions, if you have any, by the December 11th, we'll be working with them, and then we're going to submit that work back to you once it's in that form. We have another meeting before then. We have another meeting in December, but when we'll talk about that in just a minute, about the date for that meeting that Kimbrell has proposed. But before we actually get to that final report, once we pull it all together and it's in its final form, we certainly want you to see that, and before we get the release button that, okay, this is exactly what we want to do to publish that. As far as the timeline goes that we have, the next time that we is scheduled on this original timeline was December the 20th. We talked about that a little bit our last meeting that we had. So Kimbrell has proposed, based on those conversations, and because December 20th falls within the holidays for many schools and districts, she has proposed that we move the meeting to December the 14th at 4:45. That's on a Thursday. Any of your thoughts about moving it to December the 14th at 4:45?
That works for me.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Then,
I'm okay.
Okay, great. And by that meeting, we'll have this document, in a more succinct form that everybody can see. And also, I would like your thoughts. And I can't remember exactly, and I don't have that in front of me, but you had an author that,
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember if he actually came or if it was a webinar, that had done some extensive research and written a book on poverty. Some of you may recall.
I have that in a previous PowerPoint presentation. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Rich Milner or someone else?
That's it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was Rich Milner.
Okay.
That's it.
I would be, you're the ones that heard him and you're familiar with his work. Is that someone that we would want to tap into for us to reach out and say, you've spoken with this group, you know about the body of work, would you like to write some form of recommendation or some kind of reflection about the importance of this work, to include this framework, or do you think that it should remain just specifically what you have as the subcommittee work?
I think it'd be good if he wrote something. I can say in the lit review, both Dion and I used his work in what we wrote.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I think it would strengthen the work.
Okay, great. We'll reach out to him then and ask if he'll help us in that area. We've also asked Kimbrell and Stephen, because they were there at the very beginning, to write an overview, kind of the history of how the Diversity Task Force came about, that we can also provide that as part of this work. And we're going to ask Earl if he'll write a letter that talks and speaks to the importance of this work. And of course, all of your names will be included as well. We'll, also include all the goals and the objectives of the work, just so that we can have a comprehensive, document that, really just speaks to all the parts of the work. Is there anything else that you can think of as task force members that would be important to have?
I think just application of the recommendations, maybe some sort of ideas. What does this look like in practice? I don't know how practical that is, but it would be really nice to have.
Okay.
I was thinking along that same line, even if it's just some idea of how to use the guide.
Okay.
How to use the guide.
Okay.
Was that something that you would want to write?
I think once we see how it comes together and maybe see how easy it is for someone to kind of pick up and implement, I think that'll be the main thing, because our original conversations, we wanted something that wouldn't just go on a shelf, but that people could actually use. And so maybe once we get to that point of seeing how it comes together, we can see what makes sense.
That's great.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Very good.
That might be the conclusion maybe, or something, or at the end, putting it into practice or something as another section.
Yeah. And we also, of course, you have to get to one thing before you can step into another. But once we get all of this work pulled together in its final form, we'll be putting together a communication plan of exactly, very explicitly how this is going to be rolled out, where it's going to be housed, how are we going to, get the message out there that this, important work is there and it's available. So, again, if you have any thoughts or recommendations along those lines, we're certainly open to hearing your thoughts on that. But as we pull all this together and we come back, I know on the timeline we said we would meet back in December 14th. In January we have that culminating publication. Then we can actually talk about the rollout, that, okay, here's the publication and this is the way, that we're going to roll it out and how we're going to support the work and get the message out for that. Is there anything else that you can think of as task force members that, as you work through this in your subcommittee work, that you said, this is something that, we really didn't address in this work, that you think that we need to step in and pick up? I'm assuming that's a no. That again, as you start thinking more and as you start reading what other subcommittee groups have submitted, if you think of something, just reach out to to Anna or to me and let us know, and we'll certainly try to step in and make this a wholesome adventure.
And as far as your feedback on this document, feel free to add changes and revisions, and it's not just your subcommittee. Look at the whole document and feel free to add in, and then just send me your revision. I mean, in Word you can do edit. You can under review you have the ability to type in changes, and you can just send it that way if that's easier, or just send me your changes in another document. I don't care, whatever. So feel free to add in on any of the areas as you see fit. And if you want to write an area on, some ideas for rollout, or ideas for what does this look like in practice, feel free to write that in too. Whatever you send me between now and December 11th, I will incorporate into the next draft that you'll see on December 14th at our meeting for December 14th.
This is Dave Witt. Could I ask a question, since I haven't been part of the committee work, but I did a little bit of looking at the document and have a question on page 8. under resources and tools, the first paragraph starts with a dash and italicized recruit qualified teachers. Everybody see where I am there?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Then is that the only bullet point, or when you look down below the underlined section, then I see promote buy-in. That looks like another strategy, but it's not identified like recruit is. Am I right about that, or?
Yeah, it was interesting, and it was amazing how different people did different formats. So in one of the recommendations, it was literally a list like this. And then in this one, the resources and tools were shaped more as a annotation and then a link, and an annotation and a link, and an annotation and a link.
Well, I'm just saying from a reader standpoint, it didn't flow very well. It looked like I was going to get a list, and then it stopped at the list of one. And so I didn't know if that was the intention, but for those of you who've been working on this, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just telling you from a reader standpoint, it looks like a mixed format, kind of. So that one of the things we're seeking when we send this out to members and other people are going to be reading it, of course, there's those flow issues that probably was, I didn't work on this, so I'm not, like I said, I'm not criticizing, but I just want people to see how it might be read by a new set of eyes, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does. And too, Dave, just to kind of step in, that's where I think our partner that's going to help us with the design, they're going to be there to help us to, and Honor and I are going to work on this as well, to make all these subcommittee works flow together.
Yeah.
So
okay,
it won't
perfect.
it won't be just put out there just this section, this section. We're going to weave it so that it's a continual conversation through the whole thing.
Perfect. So like I said, I hope I didn't, not overstepping by making those comments. So.
Oh, it's good feedback.
No, that's exactly what needs the clarity.
Well, as a subcommittee worker, I accept the feedback. I mean, it's I didn't particularly work on that section, but I understand what you're saying. I think that as a practitioner, people want something that they can quickly look at, they can read, that is not overwhelming, and that they can get the nuggets from. And I think that when we first started this project, I believe that that's kind of what we wanted. We didn't want something that was overwhelming, but something that just got down to the nitty-gritty and actually presented people with resources that were practical, that they could use right away.
Yeah,
Point.
That makes sense.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And in the edit process, we may need to do that, but we certainly would want your, your input on that as well. Because we know you put a lot of time and effort into pulling, this work together.
Yeah. Any other areas?
This is off the topic, but I was just texting with Stephen. He's on his way to the airport, couldn't participate, wanted to apologize for being unable to be on the call.
Okay.
I told him I would send his apologies.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We'll make sure he gets the recorded version of the webinar.
I will be adding more content. I emailed Honor earlier, I think last week, that depending on what response she had received on her end, that I would be willing to add more to Area 3.
So, yes, go ahead. Now you have more time. And any other area, Carrie, any other area as well. I mean, you have until December 11th now.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that was a good point about making it very relevant and very practical, a tool that can be used, that it doesn't, we don't want it to be something that's just overwhelming. We don't want to do the work just to do the work. We want it to be something that is very usable. So I think,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to speak to Carrie's point. I appreciate your comment, Carrie, about being succinct and very user-friendly because, I mean, you get it. We all work in the same in the same world, and we've had those times where a volume of work has been handed to us, and the reality is people just don't have enough time. And I really respect the idea that you guys all get that, and you're being very practical and quick because the attention span of a principal, we just don't have that those 3 hours to review documents.
You hit that right on the head, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree as well. So.
I want to also make a comment that I, having looked at the work less than probably all of you, I wanted to say that I do think it matches. One of the things that I really liked about it was there was some practical, but it also has an appearance of well-researched and well-thought-out planning by the people on the committee. So you know, a practical list that doesn't have that that theoretical basis behind it, the strong research and resources is not something that principals will spend much time with, but this seems to have a good mix of both. So I thank the committee for doing that.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with that. And I think that's the beauty of this work is that the content that you provided, you know, resonates with you and what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So, you know it's going to resonate with other principals as well. So that's you to be commended for what you have done. Well, if no one else has any other comments or thoughts or questions that you would like to share about the work, then we will not detain you any longer, but just remind you to be sure and have any revisions to honor by Monday, December the 11th, just so that we can move to the next step of shaping this final report. We will also reach out to Rich Milner and see, what he says about being able to provide some support for this project and providing something as well. So we look forward to our next conversation, which will be on December the 14th at 3:45.
4:45.
I'm sorry, 4:45. Thank you, Honor.
Eastern time.
Yeah, because everybody's on different time zones.
That's right.
So we will pick up the conversation there, and we'll provide the revised, any revisions that are made to this document before that meeting, so you'll have time to review those. And we'll move to the next step with this project. So thank you again for your time and for your investment in this. And at NASP, if there's anything that our staff can do to assist as you move along or in your day-to-day responsibilities, that's why we're here. Please feel free to just shoot us an email or pick up the phone and give us a call. I always love to hear from you. And thanks again for this work, and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Have a good evening.
Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.